Welcome to It's a Woman's World, a show which discusses any and all topics under the sun from a woman's point of view. Our show believes that women should be treated with respect at all times and in all places. Here's today's moderator, Junita Flowers.
Welcome to It's a Woman's World. My name is Junita Flowers, and I'm your host today. And I'm so excited because this is our segment when we talk about anything and everything about African American women in our community in Minnesota. And so today I'd like to introduce my co-host, and I have Rashida Fisher. How are you?
I am well. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to our topic today.
Yes.
And then I also have our brand new co-host, Tai Goodwin-Kastens. How are you and welcome?
Thank you. I am fantastic, and I'm excited to be back. It's been a while.
Yes, this is going to be so great. So today we're going to be talking about goal setting and defining what success looks like, both each of us individually, but in the African American community as African American women, and celebrating what success looks like for us, but also the importance of setting goals and maintaining goals. And I thought today we'd spend some time first giving a little bit of background, starting with you, Rashida, a little about your journey. You have a long educational journey.
Yes.
And you've achieved your PhD, you're a therapist,
Almost.
you teach. So we want to talk a little bit about goal setting
Yes.
on that journey, and then we'll talk a little bit about Tai. Tai has coined the term employedpreneur, and really talking about the drive that a lot of African American women have to start their own businesses,
Yeah.
but some of us are working, and how do we sort of bridge that, set the goals around that, and then what does success look like? And then I'll sort of bring it up on the end, talking a little about specific goals, life goals, how do you set that, how do you come upon those, and then what does success look like in that area? So Rashida, take it away.
Yes, well, so I am currently in dissertation for my PhD program, and it's been a long time. This is something that has been really spoken into me since I was a little girl. My dad and my mom always acted as if they knew I was going to achieve highly, and so I think that is a really critical piece. And my uncle always called me doctor.
Wow.
And so I didn't know it would be this kind of doctor, you know, working towards a PhD, but now I see myself here. And so there's, I think, a piece of success and goal setting is really seeing the vision, seeing yourself where you want to be. And you may not always know every single thing that's going to happen along the way to get you there, believing in a higher power and letting the universe guide you to whom you need to speak life into you and to show you that direction has been really pivotal for me.
Now, I know you said your parents really started planting those seeds when you were a child.
Yeah.
When did you take a hold to this, that I'm going to, you know, sort of just pursue education? You know, you, of course, got your undergraduate degree. Did you know then I want to go all the way? Were you excited to just get out of undergrad and make money and get a job?
Yeah,
What was that process?
I think it was both and. You know, like I said, the expectation that I was going to be okay and that I was going to be a high achiever was just there. It wasn't something that was ever questioned, and I think I embraced it right away. Being kind of a person in my family that has been one of the highest kind of formal success stories. So that expectation has always been there. And along the way, I didn't know, again, what my journey would be like. I knew that eventually I wanted to make a difference. And I didn't know, well, I knew that I wanted to help. And so that started my journey in youth studies and youth development and psychology, eventually becoming a licensed mental health and addiction counselor. And then the piece of becoming an educator, again, spawned out of this idea that so much has been freely given to me, and I have been nurtured by so many people that I want to then be a part of nurturing others in their journey.
And so it sounds like you had this vision, you know, which I think we don't give enough attention to that. Like there's this vision. We don't know how we may get there. We don't know all the specifics, but we know, like it started with your parents, you are going to be a successful person.
Yes.
We don't really know what that looks like, but that's celebrating you and what you're going to bring to the world. And I think it starts like having that there's something I'm aspiring to, and then being okay with that and not knowing the specifics. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's some of the struggle that we have sometimes, is that we think we have to know how to do everything. And so sometimes it's enough just to have that vision and say, well, this is what I want to accomplish. And you'd be surprised to see how things start to fall into place, how people and resources and opportunities start to open up simply because you had the courage to have that vision.
Yes.
You know, as I was thinking about this topic, a couple of things that came to mind as I'm thinking about just some things that I'm trying to do right now in this season of my life. I understand the power of intention.
Yes.
I mean, when you talk about goal setting, if you really believe in your mind that, you know, again, you don't have to have everything lined out, but for me, I'm going to be stepping in and serving on a nonprofit board. I knew that I wanted, for my next step in leadership, I wanted to serve on a board. I wanted to serve on a sizable the board of a sizable organization. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't have a particular one in mind. But when you put that in your mind and you're intentional about it, even when you don't know you're doing things to get towards it, you are, because that's now what's coming out of you, because you've been deliberate and you've been intentional about it, and that's what you breathe. I mean, I don't know. So that was one, and then the value of your network. When you want to talk about goal setting, a lot of times, if we're, especially in the Black community, you know, somebody we're around our girlfriends that we grew up with, or girlfriends maybe went to undergrad with, and it may or may not be the group of women that we need to be around to grow or explore bigger and better things for us. But when we really start to look at our network and the value of that, that's what propels us to be able to get to those other places that we don't even have access to by ourselves.
Yeah, and I struggle with the network, you know, in figuring out my own career. When I'm a first generation college grad, and so I'm actually the first person in my family, and that's including my mother's 5 sisters, to actually be in a corporate environment. The folks in my family, they have had civil jobs, or they've had jobs as social workers, and so I didn't know how to have a network. And that was something that I sorely lacked, even in college. You know, I didn't know how to connect to people. I didn't always realize that the associations that you make in college have the potential to really open so many doors for you. And so you're right, understanding the value of building a strong network and not being afraid to approach people that look different from you, or people that you think maybe they're looking down on you because you don't have the same background. You'd be surprised to see how many people are willing to help you if you ask, and part of that is setting a goal so that you have that foundation to ask people for the help that you need.
So it sounds like just some foundational pieces. When it's kind of your family, where you're growing up, the environment that you're growing up in, it's really important for that to be positive, so that starts to lay the groundwork for you to be able to sort of jump off into whatever it is. It may not be that you're going to get your PhD, but your parents told you you were going to be successful. And with those words, you get to then make it what it looks like for you. But they basically said there's nothing less. Like, you cannot fail, and whatever that failure, and I don't mean fail like make mistakes, but you can't just decide life is going to pass me by.
Right.
And then once you sort of took that in, you made it your own, but your parents laid the foundation. Success is what you're going to be, and you started shooting for that. Let's shift a little bit and talk about this whole employedpreneur. How did you come to that term?
I am really interested.
And what does that mean? And let's know, because you really had to set some goals to be able to make those transitions and make room for both.
I did, and I want to step back a little bit, because I know that success that you've had did stem from all the vision and seeds that were sown, and sometimes we don't have that. And I've often been really curious. Like I said, if I've ever go back to school for a PhD, I would want to study, I think, what we call outliers. You know, the folks that there's always that one person in the family who is totally different from everybody else, and that would have been me, right? I'm the one that went to college. I'm the one that went away. All of my family is back on the East Coast, so I'm all the way in Minnesota. And so I've always had these desires that were so different from the family that I grew up with. And I'm really curious as what spawns that for some people when you don't have that foundation and yet you find that path anyway. And that's how I actually got into this whole idea of being an employedpreneur, which is short for being an employed entrepreneur. I was working at a job. I was actually working in a 6-figure career, and it was great. Or I wouldn't say great, I would say it was good. And so when you have that good job, most people say, what do you mean you're going to leave your good job? But my goal was I wanted more freedom. I wanted more flexibility. I wanted to be able to control my income. And I couldn't do that in a job. And so I started working a business while I had my day job. So I was an employed entrepreneur. And that's how that started.
And it can be really difficult, going back onto your point of you didn't necessarily have all those seeds, you know, sort of planted for you as you were growing up. It can be hard, especially in our community, when you are successful, you know, that looks like corporate America, what the external standards are. You are in corporate America, you have a really nice living, you're moved off, it looks like you're doing the things that your parents always wanted you to do. It can be hard to step away, because now all of a sudden you're not successful, you're crazy. How do you do that?
It. Oh, absolutely, because at the very time that I wanted to step away, it was 2008.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and they were like, seriously, you're going to step away from your job? But if you have those goals and you have that within you, no matter how many times you try to quiet it, it's always going to come up, and you'll find yourself at that same place every single time coming back to it. And so, yes, it's hard, but it's like that network. You know, you find those new people, you find those new connections, you change your environment. One of the reasons why I moved to Minnesota was a change in the environment, but you do those things that are going to allow you to pursue those goals that you have.
You know what I think what I hear from your story and your path is that there has to be a certain amount of self-assuredness, but there also has to be some spirituality there. And you can call it and practice it however you want, but there has to be a faith in things being okay. Because otherwise we won't take risks, and we will only do what is supposed to be. Right?
Yeah.
To take the risk to leave a job, to leave your security, is what really people are thinking about. I know this.
Yeah.
And to leave this, what I know, and to do something unknown, even though I'm driven to it, can be quite scary. So faith, believing that you're going to be taken care of in the midst of your transition is really powerful, and I think is what sustains you even more than perhaps the people that the universe brings in you to carry you along the way.
Yeah, there's a term I heard once, and I never forgot this word, and I had to go look it up when I first heard it. But I remember hearing someone, I was maybe in high school, talk about self-efficacy.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing, you know? And I think that's a lot of it. You know, we don't always talk about that word. We don't always teach, you know, what it means to really be able, we talk about resilience, right? But it's a little bit different, because there's a different intention with self-efficacy and the belief that I can and I will. And no matter what comes my way, I will be able to succeed. I will be able to go after the things that I want. So that one word was really a game changer for me.
And I think the faith piece is really important, because it does it sort of takes us off the hook. Like, I'm not responsible for the outcome of everything. I mean, we have to work. You can't be a passive bystander, but you don't have to, again, if you're setting a goal, I don't have to know what it's going to look like in the end. I don't have to know every step even to get there. I just have to know that this is what I want to do. And then once you start moving, and as I was just kind of referencing in a talk about, you know, one of the most valuable gifts, you purchase that with experience. Like, there's nothing that experience, what experience brings, nothing else in life can give you. So it's like having those goals, and then through living and that experience, that's what really sort of like kind of guides you along the way. You know, you have that faith, that's kind of what gives you that confidence, and then you have the goal, that's kind of your roadmap, and then this experience that now you're applying, and the experience also gives you sort of that additional I can do this, or I know how this works, or I've been here before, and then that gives you a little bit more confidence to take another risk, to go another step further.
Yeah. And there has to be, I mean, let's go back to intentionality. There is a goal, so there is a vision, and there are steps to get there. So you have to do your homework. There is a certain amount of research, exploration, knowledge building that you have to undertake in order to bring things into fruition. But you don't have to know it on your own. You can seek the guidance of other people. And I will say that that's been one thing that's been really pivotal for me, is positioning myself, or not being afraid to ask for help and to say, I don't know. This is what I want to do. I don't know how to do that. Can you help me?
Yeah.
I think that goes into the value of your network again. And
Yes.
when I say network, I don't just mean, you know, the corporate leaders. I'm talking, as we talked about in our series on mental health in the African American
Yes.
community. You know, a lot of black women don't see a therapist, and we wait until trauma hits. You can have a therapist in your life just like you have a esthetician or a hairstylist.
Right.
I mean, because sometimes a therapist, you can talk through life changes. You know, I'm going through, you know, I'm going from 35 to 36, and that seems weird for me, and I want to make a big change in my career, and I just had 2 kids. Like, or whatever it is, your therapist can help kind of work through some of those things, because you don't
Yes.
have to know it yourself.
You don't.
But again, that's the power of intention and making sure you have the right people in your network or your circle so that you can navigate these roads.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's also just understanding how life works. I think a lot of times in the African American community, we're so used to being in survival mode that we think that's the only way life works, where we're always scrambling, we're always in survival. And the reality is, there's life beyond that. And so the way it works is, it is the experience, it is the asking, and it's also the belief, but it's also when you make a misstep, it is not the end of the world. And I think a lot of times in our community, when we see people fail and we hear, especially with social media, somebody's in the spotlight and they make a mistake and everybody is criticizing them. And that will happen. But the reality of it is, that's life. And people pick themselves up, they get back on, you know, their path, they find their goal, they set a new intention, they ask for more help, and that's just part of living, and there's no shame in it, there's no flaw in it. That failure can even be an experience that teaches you something that you need for the next leg of your journey.
You know, as we're talking about goal setting and achieving success, there needs to be a level of discipline and sacrifice. You can't do everything, and you can't be all things to all people if you're working towards a goal. That may mean saying no, and I have to work very hard at that. There may be times where you have to say, or you choose to say no to certain things because it takes you off the beaten path, off the path that you are you're destined to go down.
Yeah, sometimes it means saying no to people. And I think that's really hard, especially when you want to reach certain levels of success that maybe your existing environment, the people that are in that circle, aren't familiar with. It can be very scary because now you're going to be the one on the outside.
Yes.
And so you're alone, and you haven't yet figured out how to connect to this new network of people. So now you really feel like you're floating, you know, in space, because I don't fit here anymore, but I'm not quite there anymore. So where am I? You know, what's happening? You know, how do I cope? How do I make connections? How do I now figure out who I am? Because it's different than who I was last year, right?
Yes.
Even taking it to as a parent, and, you know, talking to my kids, you know, sometimes if, you know, they're studying for a test, or, you know, maybe there's a game coming up, and, you know, I'm telling them, well, you know, your team's counting on you, or you have to work really hard, or you got to put in the time. And then after that, but you have to cut yourself some slack. There comes a point where now I just got to trust that I put in the work and that it's going to work. And I think it's teaching that, so that then from that experience, all of it, as I was telling my daughter, like, then all of a sudden, after you have enough of those, you start to trust that intuition or that gut. Okay, I know how this works. If I study, I usually get nervous, but every time I go in and I perform, like, now all of a sudden you're able to take that nervous energy or that doubt that makes you say, you know what, I don't know if I can make this goal. Oh, but I did this thing 5 times. It looks just like this. I get how the process works, and then you can coach yourself through it.
Absolutely.
So it's valuing, experience is such a valuable learning tool, but it ain't cheap. It is not cheap.
That's true.
And your self-talk.
Yes,
right?
yes.
We have so many people telling us what is, right? We have social media, we have friends and family, we have our own shoulds we put on ourselves. And so the way that we talk about things, you know, words are so powerful.
I agree.
The way you talk about something is really important. And not only what you say out loud, but what you say to yourself.
Absolutely.
And you have to speak life into yourself, and say things and nurture yourself and give yourself permission to to not be okay sometimes, even on your journey.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
love
voice you
that.
hear all the time. Your own.
Yeah. Well, I know there are times when you hear other voices
Louder
and
than
I'm
yourself.
not, well, yeah. Well, I know there's a term that I grew up with hearing all the time. Who does she think she is? Right. And I think that's something that we hear a lot in our community. I don't know who she thinks she is because we see somebody doing something different or wanting something different.
Yes.
And I don't think we realize how much we internalize that, because even after those people that have said that are gone, whenever we try to step up and do something different, the first thing that comes into our mind, well, who do you think you are? And so there's the positive talk, but sometimes it's being able to talk to those things that you don't want to hear and say, I know who I am. Now, I don't think, and that's just the conversation I've had with myself, I don't think I know who I am. I know I am strong, I am confident, I know I've had other successes, so I can do this.
Yes.
And it's learning to have those conversations with yourself that will help you reach your goals as well.
And also having that conversation with yourself, but realizing that never goes away.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least in my 44 plus 1 years, it hasn't gone away. So I have to talk to an 85-year-old to see if it went away at 85 or 90. Like, I'm not quite sure at what point, but it's then being okay, because then at some point we think, well, I should have this figured out by now. Like, I've been around this too many times, but no, we will have that forever. And we have to then, that's how we build it up, by saying, you know what, I've been here before. This is the conversation I have to have with myself. And then we become okay, because we are so hard on ourselves as women, as entrepreneurs, as mothers, as professionals. Forget what the rest of the world is saying sometimes. It's what are we saying to ourselves, and it's like cutting ourselves some slack. Then when we celebrate, and I'm talking to myself, because I am like, I can celebrate everybody else's success, but it's harder for me to celebrate my own, because then I feel like once I celebrate, I've set the bar higher, and now I got to perform. And it's not that, nope, you need to slow down and just bask in it. When people tell you, my mentor told me, she had given me a compliment, and of course I told her all, like, sort of minimized in 13 different ways in like a matter of 2 minutes. And she's like, Junita, thank you is a complete sentence. Like, say thank you and that's it. Like, you don't need to explain anything to me. You don't need, take it in. And it's like, it's when I take it in, because otherwise, so here somebody just gave me all this positivity, and you know what I've done? I've blocked it and I've pushed out negativity. Oh, no, this is so old. Or, oh, no, I didn't really do that, like, or I made 12 mistakes, and like it's, I've now taken that positivity that came towards me and I fed it negativity. And that was my own voice. So now, not only did I hear her positivity, all I hear is my negative voice. So being able to turn that off.
And that is historical. That is a historical narrative that we as African American women have to continue to combat. We've been bombarded with negative messages about who we should be as African American women, and what we should be looking like, and what we should be doing. And so we have to combat that because we get it honestly. And it's about time that we celebrate ourselves.
That really gets into the power of intention, and so that takes me into a celebration and a milestone that I had last year. And sort of, I had a big birthday last year, 44 plus 1, and I know that I want to achieve some things that make me afraid.
Yes.
And so for me, I'm a hands-on learner, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a fear. So this is my goal of, I want to tackle something that seems impossible, and I want to prove to myself, so then I have this tool every time I get ready to take on the next thing, that nope, if you can do this, you can do that. And so I went skydiving. Now, I am afraid of heights. I never thought in a million years that I would jump out of a plane, but let's take a second and watch this video of my experience.
Welcome to Skydive Twin Cities, where it's always sunny and it never rains. Today we're skydiving with Junita. How are you?
I'm so excited.
Hey, are you nervous?
A little bit.
Yeah, you should be, right?
Yes.
You're skydiving with Robbie. I'd be nervous too.
Yeah, although Robbie looks like somebody who's been skydiving for a while.
Yeah, a few years.
Just looks safe.
Yeah? Super safe. All right. You got any last words before we go up? All right, sweet. We'll see you up top then, okay?
Yes, thank you. I'm excited.
I was a year old. Watch your head. Yay!
That
Wow.
was amazing.
Amazing.
I don't think I'll ever do it again, but I did it. But you know what? This has been such a great show. And I think just as we wrap up, if there's just one thing that you can offer as either a word of encouragement for women that have these goals but they're afraid to execute, if both of you guys can just take a couple seconds of just to give that little positive nugget of, you gotta go for it, because this is the only life you have. That would be my little nugget.
You know, I would just say trust that you have everything you need to be successful. Faith is the key.
I would say go for it, because you never realize who you're being a role model for.
This is amazing. This is amazing. I hate that it's over, but our time together has come to an end.
Yes.
So thank you, Tai, to our new co-host, and thank you to Rashida,
Yes.
our always have been around co-host. And this is going to be my final show as an official co-host, but I'm sure I'll be around here and there. But it's been great. And thank you for joining us today, and thank you from It's a Woman's World.